If you are here right now, it is not a coincidence. It is not the algorithm. It is not luck. There is a very specific reason why this video appeared on your screen on this exact week, and before you keep watching, I need to prove that to you. In the last 3 days, something has moved inside you. A silent restlessness that does not come from any particular problem. A thought that keeps circling back, a question that will not let you sleep the same way, a feeling that is hard to name, that something is about to turn, to change, to rearrange itself. You tried to push it under the rug. You blamed the exhaustion, the routine, the hard day, the weather, the phase of the moon, your diet, the overwork. But none of those explanations adds up, because restlessness does not behave the way exhaustion behaves. It does not pass after a good night's sleep. It does not disappear after a weekend. It stays there, beneath everything you do, whispering in silence a question you are not yet willing to formulate out loud. Maybe it is a question about a relationship. Maybe it is about a job. Maybe it is about a part of yourself that you abandoned so long ago you have already forgotten what it was called. It does not matter what the question is. What matters is that it is alive, and it will not pass on its own. Because between August 2 and August 5, a window of 4 days opens, a window that the Hermetic tradition has described for over 2,000 years as the message of Mercury. And what you are about to hear here is not an astrological prediction, it is not pretty mysticism. It is a symbolic operating map, a method for reading reality, a practical sequence for turning that restlessness into direction. In the next few minutes, you will understand exactly what this period represents, why most people will cross these 4 days feeling nothing but irritation and confusion, and how you, if you know how to listen, can use this window for an internal reorganization that would normally take months of therapy, meditation, trial and error. Pay attention. Every block of what comes next is a piece. And the moment the last piece clicks into place, you will understand why your click on this video was already, by itself, the first step of the process. There are 2 kinds of people on this planet right now. The first group, which represents the vast majority, is feeling exactly the same thing you are feeling. The same restlessness, the same sense of a threshold, the same strange fatigue that doesn't come from the body. But this group will attribute all of it to the wrong place. It will say it's lack of sleep. It will say it's work. It will say it's family. It will medicate the symptom, push the restlessness toward the weekend, fill its eyes with screens so as not to look within. And when the 4 days have passed, this group will remain exactly where it was. A little more worn out, a little more numbed, a little more convinced that this is just what life is. The second group is infinitely smaller. It is the minority that recognizes the sign when it appears. That understands there are specific moments in the year, in the cycle, in the cadence of reality, when internal attention is worth more than any external decision. And if you've made it this far, if you're listening to these specific words, you belong to the second group. You won't waste it. And that is why these 4 days, August 2nd, 3, 4, and 5, are not common dates on your calendar. They are a call to slow down, to observe, to stop reacting and start interpreting. In the ancient Hermetic traditions, Mercury was never the small, cold planet that modern astronomy describes. Mercury, on the symbolic plane, was always the messenger. But pay attention, not the messenger who brings good news, the messenger who brings to the surface what was hidden from you by yourself. Mercury is the archetype of knowledge in motion, of communication between layers of consciousness, of the intelligence that crosses the veil between what you already know and what you still pretend not to know. And it is exactly this kind of knowledge that the window from August 2 to 5 offers to those who have the internal infrastructure to receive it. It is not new knowledge. It is knowledge that was already inside you, waiting for the right moment to rise. And the right moment is now. Think of a sealed bottle with heavy sediment at the bottom. While the bottle is being rocked, shaken, jostled by the constant motion of routine, the sediment doesn't settle. The water stays cloudy, and you can't see anything clearly. But the bottle simply needs to remain still for a few hours for the sediment to settle and the water above to become crystal clear. Your mind works exactly the same way. And what the 4-day Hermetic window does symbolically is create the conditions for this pause. Not because some external force forces you to stop, but because if you accept the invitation, You yourself choose to slow down enough for the sediment to settle. That is where clarity appears. It doesn't come from outside, it comes from within, when the external noise diminishes. To understand the weight of what is beginning, you need to go back in time, very far. Ancient civilizations did not look at Mercury the same way we look at it today. In Egyptian tradition, this same archetype appeared under the name of Thoth, the god of writing, of measure, of judgment, and of wisdom. Thoth was the only one who walked between worlds without losing himself in any. He was the recorder of the soul. In Greek tradition, the same principle received the name of Hermes, the messenger of the gods, the one who carried the caduceus, the staff with the two intertwined serpents, symbol of the balance between opposing forces, symbol of the capacity to traverse dualism without being destroyed by it. And it is from this root that the very word hermetic is born, Hermeticism. The body of symbolic and philosophical knowledge attributed to Hermes Trismegistus, the thrice great, a mythological figure who synthesizes Egyptian and Greek wisdom into a single principle. The mind is the key to everything. Texts such as the Corpus Hermeticum and the Kybalion, written and rewritten over the centuries, associate Mercury with the intelligence that distinguishes, with the intellect that learns by observing, with the consciousness that transforms itself through understanding. The first Hermetic principle, that of mentalism, symbolically states that the entire universe is of the nature of mind. The second, that of correspondence, teaches that what happens on the inner plane reflects what happens on the outer plane and vice versa. The third, that of vibration, holds that nothing is still, everything is in continuous movement, even what seems immobile to your eyes. These principles are not magical formulas. They are reading tools, instruments for you to look at your life and perceive layers that raw rational analysis cannot reach. And within this system, Mercury is the guardian of the thread that connects one layer to another, the interpreter who translates what intuition perceives into a language that reason can work with. We are not talking about magic in the superstitious sense, we are talking about method, about an ancient method for the human being to organize his own mind, read his own signs, correctly interpret his own moment. And it must be made very clear before continuing, nothing of what we are discussing here belongs to the field of science. This is symbolic philosophy, it is interpretive tradition, it is an ancient language to describe internal movements that modern psychology only began to name 100 years ago. It is not prediction, it is not destiny, it is a map. And the map only serves if you know how to use it. And it is precisely here, at this exact point in the video, that I need to pause and speak to you directly. If you are feeling what I described so far, the restlessness, the sensation of a threshold, the strange certainty that you did not land on this video by chance, then what comes next was built for you. That is why I prepared Magia M28 Exercicios as 28 Chaves du Despertar, a journey of 28 days, a full lunar cycle, to transform this restlessness into language. Recognize the signs of the soul that your rational mind tries to explain as coincidence. Integrate the shadow that has been asking for passage for months, and translate all of this into practical, physical, real decisions within your life. It is not a theoretical course. It is not passive meditation. It is the structure that was missing between what you feel and what you still cannot name. The link is in the first pinned comment right below this video. If you recognize that this is your moment, comment now "I accept the cycle" as an energetic commitment to yourself before taking the next step. Returning to the message itself. There is a hermetic principle that most modern people will never internalize because it contradicts everything current culture teaches. The principle is this: silence reveals more than any answer. We live in an age in which the answer is sacred. Everything must be answered quickly. Every question needs immediate resolution. Every dilemma needs a solution yesterday. And the result of this culture is a humanity that talks all the time without understanding anything, that reacts to stimuli without seeing patterns, that judges situations before understanding them. Ancient Hermeticism understood this 2,000 years ago and formulated the antidote in crystalline form: to observe before acting, to understand before judging. That is the backbone of the method. And it is exactly this practice that the 4 days between August 2 and 5 symbolically invite you to exercise. Reduce the noise, slow down, silence the automatic mental commentary that appears before every stimulus. Because when the mind stops chattering about what is happening, it can finally see what is happening. And when it sees, it understands, and when it understands, it decides differently. That is the mechanism. It is not complicated, but it is rare. Rare because it demands something almost no one wants to surrender: the discomfort of not knowing, tolerance for ambiguity, the capacity to hold an open question for hours, days, without rushing to the first pretty answer that appears. Think of an ordinary conversation. Someone is talking to you about something important to that person. While the other person speaks, what is your mind doing? In the overwhelming majority of cases, it is not truly listening. It is preparing the next sentence. It is thinking about what to reply. It is evaluating whether it agrees or not. It is remembering a similar story that happened to it. And when the other person finally finishes speaking, you answer from what your mind had already prepared, not from what the other person actually said. That is mental noise disguised as conversation, and most of our relationships crumble because of it, without anyone noticing the cause. The hermetic practice of silence begins exactly there, in the training of listening without rehearsing an answer, of receiving the complete information before generating commentary on it, of allowing understanding to appear in its own time, not in the anxious time of your reactive mind. If you managed to notice, in the past weeks, how many times you spoke without thinking, how many times you reacted without observing, how many times you judged without understanding, comment "Now I listen," because that recognition is the first sign that the window has already begun for you. And before I continue, a quick reminder: this 4-day window does not repeat itself. The 28 chaves du despertar exist exactly so you do not waste what is beginning now. 28 days to cross from where you are to where your soul has been pointing for months. Link in the first pinned comment. Don't leave it for tomorrow because the cycle has already begun today. Now let's get to the concrete map of the 4 days. Each of the days symbolizes a specific stage within the mercurial archetype, and if you can dedicate even 30 minutes a day to this sequence, you will come out of August 5th with a clarity that today seems impossible. The first day, August 2nd, is the day of observation. Simply that. It is not a day to make decisions. It is not a day to change anything. It is a day to look. Look inward without judgment. Look outward without reaction. You wake up, and instead of checking your phone, you sit for 10 minutes and observe what is passing through your mind. You don't write it down. You don't analyze. You just observe. Throughout the day, you pay attention to the small signs you would normally ignore. The phrase someone repeated, the name that showed up twice, the old memory that came back without apparent reason. You are a camera, not an editor. You just record. And if possible, at the end of the day, you take 10 minutes, grab a piece of paper and write in raw form everything that stayed in your memory, not as an emotional diary, as a field record, as an anthropologist studying your own life. The second day, August 3rd, is the day of reflection. Now you take the raw material that observation brought you and start asking questions. Why did this memory come back? Why did this person appear in the dream? Why did this word echo? You don't need to answer yet, you only formulate. Hermetic reflection is always a work of better questions, never of quick answers. If you ask quality questions, the unconscious will start returning quality material to you. That's how the method works. The third day, August 4th, is the day of understanding. Here a strange thing starts to happen. Pieces that seem disconnected begin to connect. That pattern that repeats in your relationships, that exaggerated reaction you have in specific situations, that discomfort that always appears in the same contexts you begin to see. And seeing hurts, but seeing sets you free. It is on this day that the restlessness of the last few months begins to translate itself into language. You begin to know what it was trying to tell you. And the fourth day, August 5th, is the day of action. Not a grand, dramatic, revolutionary action. A symbolic, precise, surgical action. A conversation you had been putting off. A message you had been swallowing. a boundary you had been blurring, a small choice that carries the weight of all the choices that will come after. Observe, reflect, understand, act. That is the sequence, that is the message. This is the key that the Hermetic tradition has symbolically attributed to Mercury for 2,000 years, and that continues to work exactly the same way today, because the nature of the human mind has not changed. But I need to be honest with you. Most people who watch this video, even if they understand the map, won't be able to execute it. And the reason isn't a lack of will, it's a lack of discernment about their own obstacles. There are 3 specific forces that work against wisdom in almost every modern human being, and if you don't name them now, they will sabotage your window without you noticing. The first force is distraction. Not the obvious distraction, but the subtle distraction. The phone you pick up for no reason, the browser tab you open on autopilot, the mental conversation you have with yourself all day about irrelevant things. Modern distraction is not an event, it's a state. And while you're in that state, Hermetic observation is literally impossible, because attention never settles. The second force is impulsiveness, the need to respond immediately, to conclude, to resolve, to close. Impulsiveness is the exact opposite of Hermetic wisdom, because it forces the mind to produce an answer before it has understood the question, and the result is a life full of quick decisions and empty of right ones. The third force, perhaps the most destructive, is information overload. We live in the first era of human history, in which the problem is not a lack of content, but an excess. Your mind receives, in a single day, more informational stimuli than a person in the 18th century received in an entire year. And what that avalanche produces is not wisdom, it's noise. You think you know more, but in truth you're just more dazed. You consume 10 podcasts a week, 5 books halfway, 20 videos a day, and you can't deeply apply a single idea. Because an idea only becomes wisdom when it is digested. And digestion requires time, silence, repetition, and above all the courage to stop consuming for a few hours, to let what has already been consumed sink in. The cruel paradox of our age is this: those who consume the most information are the ones least able to turn that information into real decisions. And that is why ancient Hermeticism, with very few books and no algorithms, produced clearer minds than our age produces with entire libraries in the palm of the hand. The Hermetic traditions insisted obsessively on 2 principles that serve as a direct antidote to these 3 forces: mental discipline and discernment. Mental discipline is the ability to choose where your attention will land. It is not rigidity, it is not obsessive control. It is simply noticing moment by moment where your attention is and having the power to consciously redirect it when it drifts to places that don't serve you. Discernment is the ability to separate what matters from what merely seems to matter. It is knowing, amid 20 simultaneous stimuli, which is the only one that truly deserves a response. It is knowing, among 10 thoughts that pass through your head, which is the only one that carries truth about your life. And both, discipline and discernment, do not come ready-made. They are trained. They are built. Day after day, exercise after exercise, decision after decision. It's like a muscle. If you don't use it, it atrophies. If you use it poorly, it gets injured. If you use it consistently, it grows, gains strength, supports heavier loads. And that is why any real transformation requires a structure, a sequence of exercises, a progression, a method. Without structure, good intention evaporates before the end of the week. We have reached the point in the video where the responsibility leaves my hands and passes entirely into yours. You already understand what this window is. You already understand why the majority will not use it. You already understand the obstacles that separate you from the correct reading of the present moment. What is missing now is the structure, so you don't waste this. The 28 Keys of Awakening is the map that transforms each of these 28 days into a specific exercise, so that you don't return on day 30 to exactly the same mental place you left today. The link is in the first pinned comment. If you don't open it now, the restlessness that brought you here will find distraction tomorrow, and the window will close before you have crossed the threshold. Comment, "I will not miss it," and click. What remains now is the final piece, and perhaps the most important of all that has been said. The true message that the Hermetic tradition attributes to Mercury was never about predicting events. It was never about divining the future. It was never about controlling external reality. The true message was always something else, learning to better interpret the reality that is already here. That's it. That is the key. Hermetic transformation does not happen because the world changes around you. It happens because your capacity to read the world changes, and when your capacity to read changes, the entire world seems different, because you finally see what has always been in front of you. That changes everything. Because while you wait for the world to change so you can change along with it, you are handing over the command of your life to forces that don't even know you exist. You become hostage to traffic, to other people's moods, to the news, to the price of the dollar, to the opinion of those who barely know you. But when you understand that the Hermetic method is about transforming the reading and not about waiting for the facts to change, the command returns inward. You don't control the rain. You control how you interpret the rain. You don't control what the other person said. You control how you read what was said, and that change, apparently small, is the watershed between a life lived as a spectator and a life lived as a conscious protagonist. That is why the 4 days between August 2 and 5 are not about waiting for something to happen. They are about exercising your capacity to perceive, observe without reacting, reflect without rushing, understand without judging, act without impulse. If you do this, even if imperfectly, even if in fragments, you will emerge from day 5 as a slightly clearer version of yourself. And that is how real transformation happens, not in giant leaps, but in small clearings accumulated over time, until one day you look back and realize you are no longer the same person who entered the process. Use this window, not as a spectator, not as a consumer of spiritual content. Use it as a practitioner, as someone who decided today that the restlessness of the last few days is not a problem to be eliminated, but an invitation to be accepted. What you heard today was the preparation, the practical day-by-day revelation of what this window means for the next 28 days of your life is in the video that now appears on this screen. Click on it. The first 60 seconds will change the reading you make of your own timeline. And if you are not yet subscribed to this channel, understand one thing before you leave. The videos being published here are not isolated content. Each one is a coordinate within a larger map that spans the entire year, each window, each symbolic portal, each cycle shift. If you are not subscribed, you will receive only pieces of the map. And the next videos show exactly what happens after this window of August 2nd to 5, where the sequence points and what the next folds of the path are. Missing this is missing the context. Subscribe now, activate the bell, and go to the next video because the next piece is already waiting for you.